Hello and welcome. The global critical minerals is on, and Africa finds itself at the center of the supply chain. Demand for lithium, platinum group metals, chrome, and other strategic minerals continues to accelerate, driven by electric vehicles, battery storage, and the global energy transition. Zimbabwe has emerged as one of Africa's most significant critical minerals destinations, attracting growing investment and advancing policies aimed at beneficiation, value addition, and industrialization. Yet, the opportunity extends far beyond extraction. The key question facing Zimbabwe and the continent as a whole is whether Africa can move beyond its traditional role as a supplier of raw materials and secure a greater share of downstream value through processing, refining, and participation in the global supply chains. Hello, and welcome to this webinar brought to you by Mining Review Africa and Zimbabwe Mining Week on Zimbabwe and the Critical Minerals Reset. Can Africa capture more value beyond extraction? My name is Gerard Peter, Editor-in-Chief of Mining Review Africa, and I will be your moderator today. Over the next hour, we will explore Zimbabwe's position within the global critical minerals resets, assessing its competitiveness relative to regional peers, the practicality of developing local beneficiation capacity, and the infrastructure, energy, and financing requirements needed to support long-term growth. Now, before I introduce our panelists for today, I just want to say this actually feels like a Mining Review Africa reunion. Three of our panelists are well known to the MRA audience, and one is a newcomer, but I'm sure this will not be the last time we will be conversing with him. Our panelists today are Geert, Vice President of the Mining Industry Association of Southern Africa, Hartwanger, Head of Africa Commercial Development at Open Mineral, Veronica Bolton-Smith, CEO of Critical Minerals Africa Group, and the newcomer, Pritchard, Strategic Investment Analyst at Namibia Development Bank in Namibia. Thank you everyone for joining us. As I said, Geert, Zach, Veronica, no strangers to the MRA audience. Pritchard, I will share their WhatsApp number with you. You can join their group later on. And before we go on with the discussion, a reminder to you, the audience, that you can also take part in this discussion. Simply pop your question into the comment box on the right-hand side of your screen, and we will get one of our panelists to answer it for you. Right, let's get on with the discussion. And I want to start with you, Zach. You know, we've chatted in the past about the role that Africa plays in the global critical mineral supply. But, you know, recently there's a lot of new projects that are coming on board globally. Let's take lithium, for instance. Yes, Zimbabwe is the leading lithium supplier in Africa, but, you know, Australia, China, Chile, also major producers. The US is also rapidly advancing their lithium mines. My question to you, Zach, does Africa still have a key role to play in the critical minerals global supply chain?
Good afternoon, Gerard, and to the rest of my panelists, as well as to the rest of the audience. To answer your question quite briefly, yes, it's still significant. we've got DRC, for instance, that produces, I think, 70% of the world's cobalt. South Africa, that produces around 75% of PGMs, as well as a considerable amount of manganese. Guinea, for instance, that produces about 45% of the world's bauxite, which is required for aluminium, whereas Zimbabwe itself produces or has about 10% of the global supply of lithium, which as you mentioned, it's still a noteworthy amount, but it's also shadowed by that of Australia and South America. But with this, when you consider that along with the PGMs and the chrome that you mentioned, both Zimbabwe as well as the rest of Africa do still contribute to around 30% in total of the critical minerals across the globe.
Okay. Veronica, I want to bring you into the conversation here. Every time I look at your LinkedIn post, you are speaking at some international event. Tell me, what is the perception out there? And do you echo Zach's sentiments as well about Africa's role in the critical minerals global supply chain?
So firstly, thank you, Gerard, for having me, and also welcome and hello to my fellow panelists. Yes, it's true. I am speaking at a lot of events. What is the perception of that? I don't want to know, but it's very good to be out there and talking to people about, where the opportunities lie and, where Africa's place is in the global supply chain. I think I do agree with much of what Zach has shared there, certainly in terms of the amount of mineral reserves that the continent possesses are significant. I think it's about turning those resources into something developed, developing markets. And I think the opportunity is now in Africa's ability to sequence and also to ensure that we move beyond just extraction into where we know we can play a role in value addition and beneficiation, but with the understanding that that comes at the price of ensuring that there are some foundations in place. So we've always talked, when we've previously been discussing this, about those things such as cheap, reliable power, infrastructure and water. Those are the real basics that one would need to then start looking at value addition and beneficiation. So I think I share the optimism, but I would say that, we need to start thinking very carefully and in a very focused fashion around where those opportunities will lie and how we kind of move from A to B, because I think that's the reason, that will be the reason for our success or our failure. And I would say that, we also have the added challenge on the continent that our population will be increasing by a significant amount in the next 30 years. So that's 2.6 billion. Currently, we're around 1.5 billion, but 2.6 billion people will be residing on the continent, many of those under 18. And so it is absolutely imperative that the continent now seeks ways to industrialize. And of course, we do have these abundant number of minerals and rare earths, as already pointed out by Zach. It's now figuring out how that plays a role in our industrialization.
Absolutely. And Veronica, we will unpack some of the topics that you just touched on during the course of this webinar. Geert, if I can just bring you in, and before I ask you a question, can you give our audience an overview of MIASA and its aims and objectives?
Sure. Thanks, Gerard. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Vice President at MIASA, the Mining Industry Association of Southern Africa. So that's the platform organization of the chambers of mines in Southern Africa, in SADC. Currently, we have 10 members, so it's the pretty much most of the countries in Southern Africa are represented, including Mozambique. I'm also on the board of the Chamber of Mines of Mozambique. So we're a platform organization where we exchange information, best practices, and do coordination of, in the region, and then also bring that home, and thereby benefiting our countries and the policy making in our countries by sharing best practices that we glance from each other.
Okay. So, Kat, my question to you is, from MIASA's perspective, what are the biggest barriers preventing the region from acting as a coordinated mining bloc rather than a collection of competing jurisdictions?
Well, clearly the policy framework is in place. As you will know, we've got the African mining vision that was already adopted in 2009 by the African Union. We've got the SADC regional mining vision, and then we've got the African Union green minerals strategy. So the policies are there, especially the latter two also call for cooperation between member states. But in practice, as you mentioned, we still see a lot of countries, a tendency for countries to go it alone and to look after or look at more of a country level than at a regional level. Now, I think what is missing is implementation. What is missing is coordination and structure within SADC. So we used to have a forum of mining ministers in SADC that has fallen by the wayside. And as MIASA, we've been advocating for years now to get that reinstituted. We were quite happy that at the mining Indaba, we got the ministers of mines together with the Secretariat and MIASA to discuss possible ways to reestablish a structure and a more structured approach. We've got the revision or the update now of the SADC mining protocol that is underway, and hopefully that will kickstart or drive again the reinstatement of that the forum of mining ministers. So I think it's really a matter of coordination and communication between the responsible people within the region.
Thank you for that, Geert. Pritchard, if I can bring you into the conversation, and from a development finance perspective, what are the most common reasons mining and processing projects fail to secure funding despite having attractive mineral resources? Because at the end of the day, if there's no investment, then there will be no mines.
Yes, thank you very much, Gerard, and for the invitation, as well as to my fellow panelists. Yes, from a development finance perspective, I would actually like to frame the discussion slightly different, in the sense that Africa has never lacked mineral resources, but it has often lacked bankable projects enabling policy environments and integrated industrial ecosystems capable of attracting long-term capital. So as financiers, we don't simply ask whether a country has critical minerals. We actually ask whether those minerals can become globally competitive, business capable of generating sustainable returns over the next 20 years. We therefore hope to bring this financing perspective into discussion by obviously mentioning the first one, why projects basically fail to secure funding, which is basically market certainty. So financiers want confidence that the project has credible long-term offtake agreements with investment-grade counterparties, therefore reducing market risk during commodity downturns, while still allowing the projects to benefit from favorable price cycles. The second one is basically technical bankability. So the project has to demonstrate that it can extract and process the resource safely, efficiently, and also at globally competitive costs. Therefore, independent technical due diligence supported by robust feasibility studies and proven processing technologies are very essential in ensuring the technical bankability is viable. When it comes, and then the third one is basically the capital structure. So noting that mining and the whole value chain is very capital intensive, as financiers, we basically expect sponsors to contribute meaningfully alongside experienced financial partners. This is to ensure that at every different stage of development of various projects, there is strong support from the sponsors to demonstrate that they have an ability to continuously raise capital throughout the project cycle, therefore be able to fund the project. And the other one is basically, which is also contentious in today's topic, is basically the ESG and regulatory compliance. So today, it's not only enough to obtain a mining license. However, one also have to obtain a social license to operate, therefore complying to environmental, social, and governance standards, while engaging in communities, maintaining transparent governance, which then lenders are increasingly starting to view ESG risks such as credit risks. So as financiers, we don't only finance mineral deposits. However, we want sort of well-prepared projects which are capable with capable sponsors and have predictable cash flows and manageable risks. I believe Zimbabwe has done quite well, noting that they have raised significant capital in the past few years in the lithium sector, particularly, largely coming from the Chinese investors. However, what we are also increasingly seeing is that capital is no longer chasing mineral resource alone. It is also chasing integrated mining and processing projects that basically demonstrate long-term commercial viability. And investors are now placing greater emphasis on processing capability, infrastructure readiness, and ESG performance and market access, rather than simply a resource size. Thank you, Gerard.
Thank you for that. Zach, I want to bring you in. Open Minerals sits close to the commercial side of the value chain. From your perspective, what is the biggest disconnect between mining project developers and the realities of the global commodity markets?
Thanks, Gerard. So, yeah, I mean, when it comes to
Zach, are you still with us?
Yes, can you hear me? Gerard?
Yes, all good. Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, fantastic. Sorry. So yeah, just coming back to your question, I've got a phone going off in the background here, so apologies for that. But to answer your question about the differences between where the kind of the mine developers and the global commodity markets, basically, I mean, mine developers often focus on grades and resources underground, whereas the global markets really factor in, the final products, the payabilities on this material, the treatment charges and refinement charges, as well as the logistics to get it to the final destination. So, for example, the lithium that you mentioned, that can often be a sulfite or a hydroxide or a carbonate. These all have different types of buyers with different penalty elements and different margins at the end of the day. Also, lithium, for instance, there's been a lot of price volatility over the years. For instance, I think at the end of 2023, it was trading at about $80,000 per ton, and 15 months later, it ran down to about $8,000 a ton, right? So when projects are in feasibility, you need to factor in that type of volatility and make sure that the mine's are actually feasible at the lower part of the cost curve. Otherwise, effectively, you don't necessarily have a project, right? That you'd actually just have a trade over a certain period where the markets are in your favor. So I think it's critical that, within these feasibility studies, that developers look at the commercial aspects of those commodity markets, factor those in as early on on the feasibility program as possible.
All right. Thank you for Zach. Veronica, I want to ask you a question based on what we mentioned earlier about the fact that you attend a lot of global mining events. My question to you is, From your discussion with global investors, OEMs, and downstream manufacturers, how has Africa's role in critical minerals transition evolved compared to, let's say, 5 years ago?
Thank you very much and a great question. I think 5 years ago, we were saying that OEMs largely were focused on the raw materials, so on the minerals themselves, whereas now companies are looking more for offtake agreements. They want to get more involved in the value chain, and a lot of the refining and processing capacity is still being done in China, about 90%. So I think looking for opportunities where, in the fullness of time, some of that could also be placed closer to where their bases are. Predominantly, opportunities on the continent for that. So I think, from the perspective of the way the landscape has changed over the last 4 or 5 years, very much moving away from just looking at the continent as a resource destination or extraction destination, and more involved in kind of where else opportunities lie and how they can embed their sector into the continent.
Thank you very much for that. Geert, I want to bring you back into the conversation here. And many critical mineral supply chains rely on infrastructure that crosses national borders. I mean, we spoke last year in Angola about the Lobito Corridor, for instance. How important is regional cooperation to Zimbabwe's ability to attract mining investment and ultimately develop downstream industries?
Veronica mentioned that your infrastructure is a basic requirement. It's an enabler, and it was mentioned as well by the other panelists. The need to be competitive. So I think regional cooperation can increase the viability and also the competitiveness of mines and supply chains. So a couple of examples. If you look at electricity, critical minerals processing often requires large amount of electricity, and in the region, many countries have an electricity deficit, including Zimbabwe, and on top of that, the cost of electricity is an issue. Now, Mozambique is generating a surplus. It's setting itself up as the power supplier for the region. So rather than, for example, Zimbabwe has announced at the conference in Vic Falls that it will build coal-fired thermal power plants. Why not buy some of the power required from Mozambique, which is mostly hydropower. So that's an example where regional cooperation could work. Also, in terms of shared infrastructure, Zimbabwe is much ahead in lithium. It's setting up the downstream processing. Lithium mining in Mozambique is still in its infancy. So it might make sense then for once mines come online in Mozambique to ship lithium concentrate to Zimbabwe, and for further downstream beneficiation and take advantage of what has already been built and create advantages of scale rather than trying to replicate what we have in every single country in the region. And then also, beneficiation in country and in the region requires, I think, a redesign of supply chains. If we look at the battery market for electric vehicles, those batteries typically take about 10 different minerals. So a country like Zimbabwe or Mozambique doesn't have all the minerals that go into an EV battery, but jointly as a region, we do. So we need to build up that supply chain rather than adding some beneficiation and then still shipping it to China. There's also the matter of the consumer market. Countries like Zimbabwe Mozambique are relatively small. I believe Zimbabwe has a population of 17 million. But if you look at SADC as a whole, that's 380 million people. So that's a consumer market that could potentially sustain an entire supply chain for batteries for electric vehicles, and in the end also the electric vehicles themselves, building on the capability, the automotive industry that is already existing, in particular in South Africa. But that needs a careful design of the supply chains, and also the infrastructure, which until now is aimed at exporting out of the continent. So if we want to build supply chains within the continent, we also need to redesign our physical infrastructure. Back to you, Gerard.
Thank you very much for that, Geert. Pritchard, if I can bring you back into the conversation, please. And obviously, investors look for jurisdictions that are stable, where the tax regime benefits them, and also that that government policies, etc., are favorable for them to invest in the country. And I'm sure you would have seen that last week Zimbabwe announced sweeping changes to its constitution. For instance, regarding the election and the number of investors have in attracting investment in Zimbabwe. Is this the right?
Thank you, Gerard, for that question. Yes, so I believe mining investment is fundamentally a long-term investment, which requires a long-term repair and also investment horizon. So things like political and regulatory stability remain among the most important consideration for any investor. So any significant constitutional or legislative changes will prompt investors to reassess their country risk, particularly regarding property rights, contract enforceability, policy consistency, and the independence of this institution. Therefore, Zimbabwe has taken several positive steps, other than what happened last week, to strengthen its mining sector, despite with the changes in the legislative in terms of the elections, where we have seen that the government has sort of introduced some measures that aimed at promoting local beneficiation, reviewed mining license structures, therefore reducing the cost of doing business. It has also streamlined certain regulatory processes and introduced policy intended to encourage domestic value chain addition. However, we believe also to say some risks continue to persist, noting that policy certainty is obviously one of the very significant one. Investors would want to really understand and know for a very long time that they are invested there, that there will be stable fiscal and monetary policies, predictable tax regimes, and confidence that the regulations will remain consistent over time. The other one is basically if what you want also is security of feedstock to continue supporting the beneficiation that one wants to achieve, especially the Zimbabwean government what wants to achieve at the end of the day. Therefore, ensuring that there's always a domestic mineral supply through policies that encourage local processing before export. So if the tenor of any political regime that is there can support these initiatives to sort of continue without affecting the mining sector, we believe that can continue happening. However, the sector can still be sort of protected from this type of legislative changes. Things like that are still emerging or still that we are seeing in the sector is that there is also things like foreign exchange flexibility, where if investors' confidence really is needed or is boosted, where they know that they can repatriate their dividends or repay foreign debt or access any foreign currency for inputs. I mean, there was a conversation now that has been spoken about with the other panelists that is ranging from OEMs. I mean, if one can really bring up policies that can stabilize and ensure that OEMs can come into the country, therefore things like IPs can be protected and be able to be transferred locally, so that it can sort of support the manufacturing industry to support this emerging beneficiation sector. One can look at things like import duties and strategic processing equipment that can that can come in and be able to share in terms of the Zimbabwean sector in growing this sector. So that's my contribution, Gerard. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Pritchard. And just a reminder to our audience to pop your questions into the comment box, and we will get our panelists to answer them for you. Zach, a question from the audience, which I'm sure you'll be able to answer, and this comes from Dalma Nokwani. And her question is, with the beneficiation for critical minerals, commodity prices are highly cyclical. How can African countries build beneficiation industries that remain competitive even during periods of, for example, declining lithium or platinum prices?
Sorry, Gerard, I'm actually in a hotel at the moment, and I keep getting calls on the room's phone. But if you can bear with me, so I think the question was revolving around how beneficiation within Africa can remain competitive on the global kind of landscape in times of fluctuating commodity prices. So I think in order to achieve that, there needs to be some grants from the government in order to provide a buffer for research and development facilities, some international agreements where funding can be made available from China or the Western Hemisphere. There is this project Volt, which I think was around $11 billion. That's kind of earmarked towards procuring supply chains, and it only makes sense that the countries that are producing these minerals can get upside through the beneficiation of those materials to create jobs and kind of stimulate the local economies as well.
Okay, thank you for Zach. Veronica, back to you. Now, you've got a vast amount of experience working on the African continent. And, we're touching on this topic around beneficiation and downstream processing. Based on what you see in it, what separates the countries that are making tangible progress from those where beneficiation remains largely an aspiration?
Thanks, Gerard. So I think, where are the opportunities to win, essentially? And I think the countries that are in the position of winning are those that truly understand what industrialization will require. So it's about not just being that extraction destination that I mentioned earlier, but actually moving beyond and thinking about what minerals each country will require to support their industrialization. Now, I know there's a lot of talk around Africa's positioning around electric vehicles, but actually when one thinks about that in more detail, the price is still quite prohibitive. I've extensively worked in West Africa on looking at the uptake of EVs. In the cities, still quite strong, but on the in the peripheries, in the more provincial areas, this is more of a challenge. And why? Just as has already been indicated by some of my fellow panelists, the price of electricity is still quite high. We're looking at about, on average, 53 cents per kilowatt hour across the continent. If one is to start thinking about, the uptake of these electric vehicles, we still need to be able to afford them. And we have a huge increase of secondhand. I say secondhand, we know that it's more 13th, 14th hand on the continent, but nevertheless, that's the issue. We have an influx of secondhand vehicles still on the continent. We still need to work on things like vehicle financing to allow for people to be able to afford these vehicles. And so if we start to think about Africa's positioning in that space, would it not make more sense for us to concentrate on 2-3-wheelers? To me, that's where the opportunity lies. It's a lot cheaper, with the price increase in gas and and diesel, people are looking at acquiring 2-3-wheelers. And so it's about being smart about how we industrialize and where Africa's unique challenges and opportunities lie. So I just want to frame it in that sense. I think it's also about understanding about and the winners will be those that really understand how to develop their transport corridors or how to benefit from neighboring countries who have these transport corridors. Now, we haven't mentioned yet, but Lobito corridor running from the DRC, Zambia out through the port of Lobito is a rail line, essentially 17,000 kilometer railway, but the opportunities that will afford the continent and those countries basically in the Southern African portion of the continent, it's huge, absolutely enormous when one thinks about the opportunity there to have things like agro-processing along the corridor, special economic zones along the corridor, power sharing along the corridor, and also the additional spurs that could come. So there's already discussion about some additional spurs running from certain countries to allow them to benefit from the Lobito corridor. But ultimately, it's about recognizing where these value-added opportunities will lie across the continent. There's the Lobito in the southern part of the continent, as already mentioned. There's Beira. There is also the Liberty Corridor that will run from Guinea to Liberia. So it's about understanding where infrastructure build is currently taking place, or the discussions around that, and how countries can start to leapfrog by using those infrastructure corridors. So just to share that as well. I think the last point is around the capital flow. So we've already heard from one of the panelists around ensuring that we're able to bring return on investment, we're able to de-risk some of the projects. But I think it's also recognizing that there is huge capital opportunity on the continent. Africa possesses around the region of $420 billion in sovereign wealth funds, in pension funds, in insurance. That's African capital that essentially could help de-risk projects across the continent. Now, Zach mentioned earlier that, we really need to start to see more investment in research and development and also building technologies. And really, when we look back in history around countries that have adapted quickly and have been able to industrialize, it is those countries that have invested in their technology that has allowed them to sort of move into that industrialization space. And for Africa, industrialization is critical. And sorry to use that word, I know we overuse it, particularly when talking about minerals, but it is vital that Africa does industrialize, because it is that at that point that we see an increase in GDP and therefore an increase in economic growth. And quite frankly, the continent hasn't industrialized, and it's incumbent on those in our leadership, as well as those development partners, to recognize that Africa must industrialize to be able to meet growing demands of a growing population, and also a continent that hasn't really moved in terms of just extraction into more value addition opportunities. So I think it's about recognizing that there is capital on the continent. We need to unlock it because it's stuck up in bureaucracies. So those that we seek support from, the AU, the AFDB, the AFCs, and the rest, let's figure out how to do that, and quickly. Going back, it's also about recognizing that infrastructure opportunity. So where are those transport corridors? How can we build on those? How can we create value from those? And lastly, it's about understanding that we want to make sure that we're moving Africa beyond just extraction. We're thinking about how to be a winner in this global race for critical minerals. But just to shed a bit more light on that, I think it's about recognizing that critical minerals is not a sector on its own. It enables other sectors to grow. So it's very much an accelerant for energy, for infrastructure, for agriculture, for even finance. So really the winners will be those that understand industrialization and understand how critical minerals and strategic minerals can play a role in Africa's industrialization. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Veronica. Geert, I want to bring you into the conversation about industrialization and beneficiation. How do mining companies across Southern Africa view these initiatives? Are they seen as opportunities, risk, or maybe a combination of both?
Well, as I mentioned, the overarching frameworks are in place, such as the African mining vision and the SADC regional mining vision. And what we're seeing is that now individual countries are turning that into legislation, into laws that essentially prohibit the export of unprocessed or minimally processed minerals and critical minerals. And that in the short run creates uncertainty. So we've just had a new mining law passed in Mozambique, but it still requires regulation. And you must keep in mind that when you talk about critical minerals, that's a range of minerals. Apart from the fact that the definition varies, and in Mozambique we're still defining, coming up with our list of what could be critical, but that could include thermal coal, like in South Africa. So it's different minerals with different processing and beneficiation, and also different markets. So how that's going to play out is quite important to know for the mining industry. Are those rules going to apply to existing mines, or are they only applying going forward to new mines being opened up? So it's a bit of uncertainty that is not ideal to have. And then the other point I would make is that just because you legislated it doesn't mean that now it is a competitive, viable industry. We still need to create the enabling conditions that we've talked about, and that is still in many cases questionable. The electricity, the quality electricity at affordable prices, being able to compete internationally, because in most cases, at some point, the supply chain for the critical minerals will cross the border. So we do need to be competitive. So currently, I think the industry is concerned and is looking more at the risks than the opportunities. The opportunities will come into play once the necessary conditions are created beyond just legislating, but actually putting in place the conditions that will allow for either mining companies or industries to be competitive. Because also we have to keep in mind that not all mining companies are vertically integrated. So if it's not the mining companies themselves, who will do the downstream beneficiation? That will require potentially new investors to come in, and they will only come in when it's a viable business and when they can be competitive on a global stage. So that is still a question mark at the moment. The industry is wary.
Pritchard, I want to turn our attention specifically to Zimbabwe. And what does a country like Zimbabwe need to put in place before financiers can realistically support large-scale processing projects?
Yes, thank you, Gerard. I think some I have alluded to. One being obviously the policy certainty, ensuring that there is sort of stable fiscal and monetary policies and predictable tax regimes, and confidence that regulation will remain consistent over time. The other one is basically on ensuring that the transferability and convertibility risk, therefore foreign exchange flexibility, is very eminent and it's in place, so that at least investors want to know if they will be able to invest and be able to repatriate their dividends, or even some that are coming in, because we know that, especially if I was to give a scenario of Namibia, is that you have different types of mining companies that are coming to invest. Some are either junior or major companies, which then raise capital from various capital markets, either through debt or equity or listed markets. So then they are actually supposed to repay most of these funds back to whoever they raise their funding to. So having that flexibility and assurance that they can actually repatriate money and be able to repay dividends, therefore go back and raise further capital for them to continuously expand projects so that they can be sustainable going forward. So that strengthening of compatibility and transferability frameworks is very, very much important. And then the other one is basically on infrastructure. And this has also been spoken to by some of my panelists to say beneficiation really requires reliable electricity, water, transport corridors, telecommunications, and industrial land. This will basically help to unlock projects. Back in the day, what you would then realize is that mining companies had appetite to sort of develop their own infrastructure, pull networks, pull energy from far away so that they can be able to produce. But now the projects are actually becoming globally competitive on a cost basis. So one needs to really perform at a lower to medium cost quartile so that you can actually fluctuate or be able to absorb any commodity downturn. So for one to be able to do that, you really want to come into a country where you already have good quality roads for you to be able to transport these commodities that are already refined and its final product to whatever market that you're exporting to. You want low cost electricity. I saw even there's a question online to say there's a plant all using the same technology at different locations, one probably in Europe, one in Africa. How will this be able to compete? And this infrastructure will be actually one of those influencers that can actually be able to ensure that the projects can be viable in the long term. So cost competitiveness is really one that infrastructure needs to be in place. The other one is basically policy certainty, issues around convertibility and transferability risk. I had also mentioned before in terms of feedstock security. I mean, one now, if you had to set up, it depends on the appetite of the various investors that are coming actually to put up the beneficiation plans. So some, like it was mentioned before, some of these mining operations are not vertically integrated. So therefore, one really needs sustainable, good quality ore that can be supplied to you as a beneficiation plant or as a midstream operator. Therefore, how can we actually allow for policies that can allow for most of these locally produced ore body or concentrate that can then be supplied to these emerging midstream sector to allow for them actually to compete and provide a sustainable supply to global markets. I mean, if you look at it, it was mentioned before, China is a leader in terms of processing of these minerals. So now, meaning for you to even export into a certain market, you really need to be competitive. So who are those potential off-takers that are willing to diversify their offtake from not only China, but to look elsewhere, especially when there's also emerging risk such as geopolitics? How can one emerge? And I think those are one of the opportunities that Zimbabwe has in terms of producing and be able to avail good quality battery grade mineral that will then be able to benefit from the diversification of global trade commodities or off-takers who are looking at other markets other than getting it from China due to maybe geopolitics or any types of risk. So those are basically my contribution. Thank you, Gerard.
Thank you very much for that, Pritchard. And just a reminder to our audience, once again, please feel free to pop your questions into our comment box and we'll get our panel to answer them. A question that's coming for you, Zach, and this is from Paul Masilela. What are the biggest barriers to critical minerals investment in Zimbabwe?
Thanks, Gerard. So I think my co-participants have already touched on the majority of those. Obviously, the availability and price of electricity is a pretty big contributor towards that, as well as fluctuations in policy. It's been very volatile. I think that was also discussed a bit earlier. from the mineral ban, the raw mineral ban that came in full force, including minerals that were in transport in February, followed shortly in April, where there was then a quota system put in place, and again then last month in the government wanting shareholdings in certain mineral processing facilities and mines. So all of these factors then contribute towards limiting investment into the country. It doesn't really instill full confidence on investors and mine developers that what they've accounted for in their feasibility is necessarily going to be what happens in reality further down the development phase. But with that said, they are also compensated by quite extensive large mineral resources at very high grades.
Thank you very much for that, Zach. And there's another question that's coming from our audience, and I'd like both Veronica and then Geert to answer this. What role can artisanal and small-scale miners play in the race for critical minerals, and how can private companies and governments ensure that the ASM sector is not overlooked? Ronnie, if we can start with you.
Hi, so thanks, Gerard. I think for me, it's about formalizing the sector, ensuring that they are part of the discussion when thinking about how to, essentially improve the minerals that are extracted and the opportunities for that. And I think, it's about, we look at countries like Ghana, where they have, been quite successful recently, especially by setting up the gold board and also more formalization, of artisanal miners in the space. So I think, it's about governments recognizing that ASM has a critical role to play in this space, ensuring that they are well looked after, and by formally recognizing them, I think we're on the path to really ensuring that we're strengthening our mineral offering.
Yeah, from my side and what we're seeing in MIASA is that the ASM sector is a big challenge. As we all know, the sector comes with a range of challenges, like pollution, like improper labor practices, smuggling. The ASM sector is very big also in Mozambique, as it is in many other African countries, especially now with the high gold prices. So the sector is more, I think, focused towards high value minerals like gold, like gemstones, critical minerals. Depends on your definition of critical minerals, but some of the critical minerals require very, very large quantities, like natural graphite that we have in Mozambique, or the heavy sands minerals, where the small-scale mining really doesn't have a role. But yeah, the key is formalization, getting the sector organized, ideally in associations, so that they can be more involved in the formal part of the sector, get access to training and best practices. And again, it's a matter of structures as well, in terms of gold, structuring that supply chain and avoiding that the supply chain essentially is contraband, smuggling gold out of the country. So it's how do you tie those small-scale miners to maybe the process buying centers and processing centers for gold. I know Tanzania has done a good job in organizing that on a regional, provincial level. So there are some some good practices to be followed. Tanzania, Ghana, I think, is another one of those examples. So definitely, it's a very big sector and very important to get that right.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Gert. We are almost out of time, so I just want to ask a few more questions to our panelists. And I'm coming to you, Zach. Looking at Zimbabwe specifically, what advantages or disadvantages does the country currently have when trying to position itself as a supplier of critical minerals to global markets?
Thanks, Gerard. So I think a lot of those points have already been covered throughout the conversation. But I think just to recap, I mean, from the advantages side, there's a vast mineral endowment. 10% of global lithium supply. They're the third biggest producer of platinum in the world, and there's a lot of chrome being produced and exported. On top of that, there's proof of execution. The country is exporting its processed lithium, as well as a lot of the platinum concentrates and PGM concentrates are coming down to South Africa, where they're further refined. On the disadvantages side, again, it's the availability and affordability of power, as well as that the volatility in policy predictability. So I think, overall there's some challenges, but again, as we've already spoken about, that's often compensated by the size of the resources, as well as a proven model in some instances.
Thank you for that, Zach. Ronnie, a question to you. Now, I know that you've worked extensively in Ghana, which is now a stable and profitable mining region, and your experience in Ghana is not just in the mining sector. What are some of the lessons that Zimbabwe can learn from a country like Ghana?
So I think you're right. I spent a long time working there on policy, specifically for the automotive sector. But I think let's just understand that Ghana is predominantly sort of a gold play, and Zim is more PGMs and lithium. And so the comparison is not going to be the same, purely because you've got things like different supply chain considerations, and it makes it a bit more difficult to kind of compare apples for apples. But I think what one can take away from there is strong policies. And what Ghana did well was, that it did speak to, a number of investors to understand what some of the pain points were and some of the challenges were when looking specifically at the automotive sector. And I think that could be applied specifically in the mining space when thinking about how to really create an environment that has sustainable investment going in. So by sustainable, I mean long-term investment. Now, mining is not a short-term play. It is long-term. It is 15, it's 20 years. So you really have to start thinking about, beyond an election cycle, what is it that both governments need to do to ensure that you're landing the investors, but also how do you keep those investors long-term? And it's really understanding what the barriers are for countries going from, choosing one location over another. Now, something that I'm going to say that perhaps is a little controversial is that, Africa needs to be competitive. It's not the only place with minerals. And I think, South America has a big offering, as do other parts of the world. Now, Extensively, Africa hasn't been significantly mapped, so there's still a gap there. We really don't know beyond what we talk about is 30 to 40%. There could be way more, but at this moment in time, we don't know. And I think it talks back to your question. I think it's about the policy, so making sure that we develop policies and we truly understand what mining investors will run away from. And what they'll run away from is when you put in an export ban, or when you put in something which says a mining code that speaks specifically to traditional mining companies like your Anglos and your Rios, where you're talking about extracting and then processing and then manufacturing. You can't expect, a big mining company like that to then suddenly change its operation to then be a processor and a manufacturer. Instead, why not seek those who look at those specific areas and attract them in through policies? And I think it's about being smart. When you issue mining codes and you have export bans, what happens is you see a drop in mining revenue, as we've seen already in Malawi. So you really have to think quite clearly about what will attract an investor and what will keep them there. Because as much as we talk about beneficiation and value addition, we can't put policies and mining codes in place that deter investors. So that's number one. Number two, again, is the de-risking. So that's what investors want to see. And I think that's something that Ghana did well that could be applied in Zimbabwe. We want to make sure that we're able to put some skin in the game. So when I talked earlier about, unlocking capital on the continent, it's very much around how can we de-risk to attract further investment. So I think those are some of the lessons that I would apply that I feel maybe Zim could take advantage of. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Ronnie. We've almost come to the end of our discussion. But before we close, I'd like to ask each of our panelists to answer one final question. And I'll start with you, Pritchard. Can Zimbabwe cement its position in the global race for critical minerals?
Yes, thank you, Gerard. Yes, Zimbabwe can really cement their position in the critical mineral supply chain. And this is mainly leveraging off their mineral endowment that they currently have, and also just leveraging on other relationships within the SADC and Africa region, therefore allowing for infrastructure development such as interconnectors, so that they can allow for whoever in the region has cheap base load that they can supply to them to therefore reduce the levelized cost of production of energy. Therefore, to supply Zimbabwe, that can be a game changer for them. I mean, Zimbabwe, although they are landlocked, they also are linked to very sustainable and good road networks or corridors. And this is where basically, if you look at the DFIs and the likes of African Bank, that's where they can come in to unlock basically infrastructure development through funding, and this can also be supported through things like instruments such as project preparation funding. I mean, project preparation funding is that early risk type of capital that can really unlock the feasibility and viability of many projects, which can also equally include the development of the beneficiation sector, which one, if you look at the export and the importation, is one of the key areas that one can also look at that. And then the other one is basically leveraging off on its matured mining sector. I mean, that sector is matured, so therefore they have the right experienced personnel, basically just a change of moving from one commodity to the other in terms of producing, because they've been mining for many years. Unlike, for example, Namibia, where we're still growing, Zimbabwe has a very good professionals that can continue and deliver and provide value within that. So that's my contribution. Thank you, Gerard.
Thank you very much for that, Pritchard. Geert, the same question to you. Can Zimbabwe cement its position in the global race for critical minerals?
Well, I think Pritchard said it very well. It has the endowment, it has the mining, the established mining industry. So it needs to work regionally to provide the value chains, or to enable the value chains, and also make sure that they're competitive, and avoid that they only rely on China, but build more regional networks with the other countries in SADC. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Kat. Ronnie, the same question to you, but I just want to add on to that. Can you elaborate on skills development, and how do we also ensure that Zimbabwe has the skills in order to one, mine critical minerals and also create downstream opportunities?
Yeah, that's a really important point, and I'm glad it's been brought up, because I think we often forget that the skills and the capacity building needs to be in place at the same time as thinking about how we're industrializing. And I think it's about investing in that space quickly. In comparison, we've got 100,000 mining engineers coming out of China a year. I don't know what the number is, but I know it would be low on the continent. And that also plays into where the mining schools, we know that we have an excellent one in South Africa, but in terms of global mining schools, we've only got one, the South African one, that appears in the global top 20. So globally, though, mining schools are closing down, not enough investment, which beggars belief when we know that this is a growing industry and will be required going forward. So from my perspective, it's about making sure that we understand, where we're industrializing, which mining specifically, and what are those opportunities that we need to start building skills and capacity. It goes back to investing, having that skin in the game. So investing in our youth, ensuring that there are the requisite courses and also, training schools that can support the growth of this sector in countries. It's about utilizing our sovereign wealth funds, reinvesting the money from the sale of some of these resources back into training, skills and capacity development. So it's a vital component to success. And I think if we miss that, what happens then is that we're just, essentially bringing in experts who stay, and the skills are not exchanged. And we want to make sure that we're, at the same time as doing that, ensuring that we're growing our own, next generation of mining engineers, next generation of those in the energy space, next generation of those who can support the infrastructure development across the continent. It's about recognizing where the growth is coming from and how we're going to support that with the requisite skills and training. So yes, I'd like to see more African countries investing in this and utilizing some of that capital that I've already spoken about within the continent to do so. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Ronnie. And Zach, if we can end with you with the same question, and based on your experience working on various parts of the continent, can Zimbabwe actually cement its position in the global race for critical minerals?
Yeah, look, I think from a value chain perspective, or going back, I think from on the ground, the development, the financing aspects, that's all been spoken about, and I think well covered. From the actual trading perspective and the supply chains going forward, and export of those minerals, I think it's important to understand, or for Zimbabwe to understand the wider market, and to understand exactly what beneficiation needs to be done at what phases of the value chain in order to match the efforts, the financing, as well as the internal or in-country development to match the global demand at those various stages.
Thank you for that, Zach. And with that, we've come to the end of the discussion. And firstly, I'd like to thank our panelist, Klok, who's the Vice President of the Mining Industry Association of Southern Africa, Zach Hartwanger, who's Head of Africa Commercial Development at Open Mineral, Pritchard Adderam, who's the Senior Strategic Investment Analyst at Namibia Development Bank, and Veronica Bolton-Smith, CEO of Critical Minerals Africa Group. And thank you to our audience for joining us today. And remember, if you've missed any part of today's webinar, you can watch on demand at miningreview.com. Also, for more information on Zimbabwe Mining Week, taking place from the 17th to the 19th of November in Harare, visit zimminingweek.com. Until next time, goodbye.